Yeah.
Making go live.
I think you can start.
I can go, okay.
Great. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you watching us here on the YouTube. Welcome to the press briefing for the Geneva Biodiversity Meetings. Today is Tuesday, the 15th of March. My name is David Ainsworth. I'm the Head of Communications at the UN Secretariat for the Convention on Biological Diversity. So yesterday was the 14th of March, the beginning of the meeting. We had an opening plenary of all three bodies. Just to remind all of you, this meeting here in Geneva for the Convention on Biological Diversity includes three separate bodies. We have the subsidiary body on science, technology, and technological assessment, the subsidiary body in implementation, and the open-ended working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. All three of these meetings are taking place concurrently, and this is the first time in over 2 years that delegates to this convention process have met face-to-face, so it's an important occasion for negotiation. The opening plenary yesterday had statements from the COP15 president, also statements from the executive secretary to the Convention on Biological Diversity, our host government Switzerland also opening the meeting. And then we also found ourselves getting regional statements from around the world. Once we finished that thing, we moved on to the different bodies meeting separately and putting their work together. So first of all, I'll give you a sense yesterday, the subsidiary body in science, technology, and technological assessment, SBI-3 met with Ezequiel Benitez as chair from Mexico. They basically agreed to move forward on their program of work. Let me just take a look at my notes so we can give a sense of the sort of things that they worked forward looking on. So they took a look at the agenda items that they're going to move forward to, and they basically put together 3 different contact groups that will be meeting over the course of the next few days. So first of all, they put together one that's going to deal with the monitoring approach for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. That contact group is going to look at this question of how do we come up with the best way to monitor progress with regard to activities under this upcoming framework. That's an important point because under the last set of targets, the Aichi biodiversity targets between 2011 and 2020, the monitoring approach had been criticized as being not rigorous enough. So the attempt now is to ensure that we have a way of measuring progress against the upcoming targets. So that's one contact group that will meet over the next few weeks as well. There will also be a contact group that discusses issues related overall to marine and coastal biodiversity over the next little while. We'll also have a group relating to biodiversity and health, and then finally one on biodiversity and agriculture. So that to close the plenary, they set up the contact groups for that. And then for that substa group, just to let you know, they will be moving forward today. Let me just take a look at what we've got our schedule here. They'll be moving forward today in the evening on the question of health. So that contact group on health that was established by the scientific body will meet tonight from 7:30 to 10:30 p.m. And discuss those matters. The subsidiary body in implementation also organized their work yesterday. So the important thing to note is that the subsidiary body implementation also has a number of actions that are related to the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, and they will be linking up with those. In particular, the subsidiary body was going to be reviewing the 10 items that it'll be looking at. There's 2 that I want to mention in particular. So there's a new document presented to the governments on resource mobilization and the financial mechanism for the convention. So first of all, with regard to resource mobilization, one issue under the convention is ensuring that there is a continuous and substantial increase in the money that comes from the global level for biodiversity work, and that's bilateral funding and multilateral funding, at the national level and indeed at local levels as well. So a big part of the discussion is what are the ways that we can mobilize that. So a new document was introduced and governments will begin to look at that over the next little while. There was also a discussion of the financial mechanism. So for the Convention on Biological Diversity, a big source of financing for parties is the Global Environment Facility. The Global Environment Facility, in fact, has had meetings over the last little while organizing and arranging their contribution to the biodiversity agenda. And so guidance that would go to this body is being put together by the convention. And that's another new document as well. The other new document I'll mention for SBI is that they're going to be looking at the Gender Plan of Action. Under the convention, parties have recognized for a while the need to understand gender considerations when we're looking at the way that biodiversity is managed. So in response to that, there is a new gender plan of action that will arrange the way that the convention and national governments incorporate gender into all of their work. That plan of action will be discussed as well at the course of this meeting. And so I think the next time that plan will be discussed will be later on this week. And then finally, we also had the opening of the open-ended working group on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. So that group has been meeting several times, and it's preparing the overall framework that will be negotiated and set to be agreed in Kunming, China. So the group had one part of its meeting online in August, and they made a lot of progress, mostly in the form of collection and compilation of views. So it means that governments have taken a look at the entire framework, which includes a series of goals, a series of milestones, and 21 different targets, and they put their views together. So at this meeting, they will be looking at all those in order. Yesterday during the meeting, the co-chairs discussed with the parties, reminded them what they had covered before, and reminded them of the directions of things that they needed to look at. So that working group will have a great deal of work going on today. So in particular, we will have 2 contact groups that are going to be meeting over the course of today, and that's something you may want to follow online on the Interactio system. So first of all, this morning we'll have contact group 1 is going to meet from 10 a.m. Geneva time all the way to 1 p.m. Geneva time. So that contact group is going to focus on the goals and the milestones of the targets. So remember, the framework has got overall some main goals that relate to protecting biodiversity, using it sustainably, and then also mechanisms for implementation as well. That contact group will discuss that, and then it'll also look at some of the first sections of there. The group is going to be a large one. It'll be in the plenary room today. It's led by Mr. Vinod Mathur of India and Mr. Norbert Berlacher of Switzerland. So they are meeting in just, I guess, about an hour's time, and they'll convene that discussion over a while. So maybe we'll take a look and see how governments will look at that. The second contact group will be meeting in the afternoon from 3 p.m. To 6 p.m. Geneva time here as well. And that's going to be focusing on the first 8 targets that are listed in the framework. So the first 8 targets are about what's called reducing threats for biodiversity. And this is looking at both the indirect drivers of biodiversity loss, as well as starting to look at some of the indirect drivers as well. So that discussion will focus on 8 targets that really look at ways of specifically protecting species and ecosystems from a lot of the direct drivers of biodiversity loss. So that group is going to be co-led by Tiona Karchava of Georgia and Rosemary Patterson of New Zealand. And so they'll have a round of discussion here. Just to let you know, I was in a meeting with the Bureau DAO just a few moments ago, and governments were just emphasizing that they needed to make really substantial progress on those targets. For that contact group as well, just to let you know, they will not be covering the targets in a sequential order. We were cautioned to say that they won't go from 1 through 8. They'll be jumping around. I think they'll be starting with 5 and 6 and 7 and then moving around as well. So pay attention to that. Those will be the main items for today. We also have a few side events taking place today. Now, unfortunately, those of you who are not here in Geneva, you're not going to be able to cover these, but if someone happens to be looking at this online and you're coming back on site later on, we'll just let you know what we've got. The side events today, they are actually very interesting. So first of all, there's an event organized by the BMU, German Environment Agency, the United Nations Environment Program, the CBD, and that's about the One Health approach for biodiversity and health. One Health is a new approach that takes a look at the issues of animal health, human health, and ecosystem health. And what it does is it brings these together and tries to coordinate policy areas. And given the circumstances of the recent global pandemic, there's been a great deal more interest in how this One Health approach can indeed move forward and help us working on that. So this event is going to talk about how that will be fast-tracked. A new fund was announced to bring that forward. So that'll be a side event taking place here on site in room 14 on level 2. That side event starts at 1:15. We also want to take a look at the United Nations Commission on Trade and Development, UNCTAD, along with ITC. It's going to be looking at trade-related aspects of the goals and target system for the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework. So it's going to look at, okay, the impact of trade. This is important, given that we know now that under this framework, we're going to be looking at the relationship to trade, subsidies, and all these matters as well. So that'll take place in room 9 today on level 2. We'll also have a side event by UNEP, UNEP's World Conservation Monitoring Center, the government of Switzerland, the European Commission, and Cameroon. along with the convention IUCN. So we're going to be looking at information center. So the use of tools to increase national collaboration for reporting towards the targets. So again, it's part of this monitoring framework. How can we come up with a variety of tools? That's going to be in room 4 on level -1, so the basement level of the building as well. 2 more events coming up. First of all, some of you may have noticed that about a month ago we had a paper put out by Future Earth, GeoBond, and an organization called Biodiscovery. So this paper came out and it pointed out that while we focus on the importance of protected areas in achieving the goals of the Biodiversity Convention, there is a need to have a holistic implementation of all aspects of the target. This paper got a great deal of coverage, and they're going to talk about this paper in the side event too. It's going to be looking at the way that we have to understand the incorporation of protection, sustainable use, and a variety of other issues. So that's going to be in room ABC on the 0 level here in Geneva. And then the final event I'm going to talk about brings together a couple of other agendas. This is a joint side event on biodiversity, chemicals, and waste in this case. So biodiversity, chemicals, and waste is dealt with not so by ourselves, but also by the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions and the Minamata Convention. So there's an interlinkages document that came forward looking at the way that these issues interact. And so this side event will talk about that interlinkage and look at ways that we can move forward. This kind of interaction between different environmental agreements is actually really important. As you know, the United Nations Environment Assembly recently had a call by governments to deal with plastic pollution. And that's part of this idea where we'll be looking at these overall environmental issues of pollution and management of chemicals across areas. So that side event will be taking place in room D, level 1, over the course of today. In terms of press conferences today, we've got a couple of press events organized. At 10 a.m., the Forest Peoples Program and the International Indigenous Forum on Biodiversity will have a press conference here at 10 o'clock, so check it online on the YouTube channel. And then also at 11 o'clock, the Special Rapporteur for Human Rights and the Environment, David Boyd, will be here to talk about his particular work on this. And again, this question of rights in the environment is increasingly important. As we move forward in the agenda, a lot of people are talking about the questions of rights, rights to the environment, rights of people to a healthy environment, and that's the kind of issue that you'll be taking a look at. So that's going to be 11 o'clock here on the YouTube channel. That's all I have to announce for you today, a very short briefing. So I encourage you to follow the press briefings today, follow the discussions online on the Interactio channels. You can go to www.cbd.int/live, and you can take a look at all of these streams. You'll also be able to get some of the streams we've had from yesterday. So have a great day, everyone. If you've got any questions, please feel free to email us here at the Secretariat. And I look forward to hearing from you and to your participation in the meeting. Thanks very much, and have a good day. There you go. Good.
Okay, it froze 3 minutes.